This episode of the podcast is brought to you by J.D. Chapman Insurance Agency. Are you an aspiring business owner or entrepreneur looking to be part of New York's multi-billion-dollar cannabis industry? If so, the decisions you make in these early stages are imperative to your future success. And I'll tell you from personal experience that you will face risk on a daily basis. So it's important to have a comprehensive insurance program in place with a trusted, reliable partner. J.D. Chapman offers special insurance for cannabis growers, medical and adult use dispensaries, edibles manufacturers, testing labs, ancillary businesses, and more. Available coverage includes general liability, product liability, excess liability, and workers' comp. In this exciting and rapidly growing industry, it's important to have a partner you can trust. Contact J.D. Chapman today at 315-986-4062 for all your cannabis insurance needs. J.D. Chapman, from seed to sale, they have you covered.
The views and opinions expressed on this show belong solely to the hosts and their guests and do not reflect the views of any outside institutions unless explicitly stated.
What's up, everyone? My name is Steve Vanderwall, and I'm the host of Cannabis Cum Laude, a podcast devoted entirely to cannabis. This podcast will cover a full spectrum of topics, including cultivation, business, medicine, politics, culture, advocacy, and everything in between. Because let's face it, the cannabis industry is very complicated. It's robust, and it has a ton of moving parts. So it's going to be my job to help you understand it a little bit better. So tune in every week for a brand new episode. And if you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review the show. And if you really, really, really like the show and are interested in sponsoring, please shoot me an email at logistics@cannabiscumlaude.com. Now enjoy the show. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Cannabis Cum Laude. Super excited to be here today. We came off an awesome episode from last week with the Growers Roundtable with the homies, which I thought was a perfect transition into this week's episode for a Hashmakers Roundtable. Today, I'm with some local experts, Joe from Upstate Organics, New York, and Jamos from Jamos Primo. These two are the hash guys in the area, and I've said it on the show, and I've said it 100 times. I don't really know much about hash or the concentrate market, but we're going to get the full rundown today. So, guys, thanks so much for joining. I appreciate it.
Yeah, No problem, man. Thanks for having us.
Yep, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I've obviously been following your guys' page for a long time now. You're definitely the experts and the OGs in the area. But I want to kind of know, what was the beginning like? How did you guys get involved in this type of this side of the cannabis industry, and where did it all start?
You want to take it away, Joe?
So I have quite a bit of experience in the cannabis industry. It started probably in about 2013. Just started, I liked smoking cannabis. I really got into the BHO scene around, pretty early, 2012, 2013. And then I moved to California in 2015, and I got involved in hydrocarbon extractions. Did that for a couple of years until the solventless scene kind of started blossoming around 2016, 2017 with, rosin, full melt that started coming out of the scene, but it was very rare. Now you see it, everywhere, and that's kind of my main focus right now is solventless concentrates ever since I've moved back to Rochester, since legalization.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, extracts in general, back in the day, me and a few friends used to try to make BHO back in our basement. Open blasting, really dangerous stuff in our basement just to try to make dabs that we seen people using on Instagram over in California. And that's always what we were shooting for, is just trying to find that next cool thing that no one else could get, essentially. And so, yeah, it blossomed from just dabbing hydrocarbons, a lot of BHO. You notice how they affect you a little bit differently than rosins and full melts. And kind of when it first hit the scene, it pretty much blew up immediately. When I tried it, I knew it was pretty much the cream of the crop. And made just with ice and water. You couldn't beat it when you're making a lot of extracts with butane, propane.
Yep.
It's a little bit dangerous. So having that safe, natural route kind of really sold me in. So
And you hear about people fucking blowing up their garages and doing all this crazy shit with, irresponsible hydrocarbon extraction.
Yeah.
Before we kind of dive into the solventless, give me a little bit of, background on like what exactly is hydrocarbon extraction, how does it work, and what are the types of products that it produces?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different equipment and techniques to hydrocarbons. Different salt. Really, it gets down to having a solvent that takes the THC and all the oils and separates it from the plant, and then you're left with the oils, and then it's purged out, and there are techniques to clean it and things along those lines. The main difference is with solventless is you really put ice and water and your material in a bucket and stir it around by hand or with a machine and collect all those nice trichomes that you're left with, dry them, and then you're left with a beautiful product. And it's really a mechanical separation. You're literally essentially plucking all those trichomes off the flower. So it has no sort of solvent to change its chemistry or anything like that. It's really the closest thing to a flower high that you could get from a concentrate. So,
and it's a lot of work, yeah?
I'd say so, yeah. Yeah, definitely. A lot of physical work. Yeah, I'm rowing a bucket for about 45 minutes straight rowing, and collecting and dumping water and working with ice bags. So it's definitely a labor of love, but once you fall into it and love it, it turns into a passion.
No doubt. Now, is it, for the process for hash making, is it pretty much the same process, or, like cultivation, you can have a system, you can grow hydro, you can go soil, indoor, outdoor, different crop steering schedules, or is hash making pretty much the same steps?
It is not. So there are certain things when you're growing that you want to do specifically for making hash. Everything from, nutrients to, chopping at the right time. So a lot of the times when people are growing specifically for flower, they'll let you'll let the flower go full term or a little over full term to get the trichomes. The ideal is 75%, 70% milky, 30% amber. Sure. And if you harvest that when you have the trichomes in that state and then try to make solventless, the color won't be the same, the terpenes won't be the same. So you generally try to harvest a little bit earlier when the goal is to make solventless hash.
Yeah, we were talking about that. We actually were talking about you guys on the Growers Roundtable, and that didn't make a whole lot of sense to me because my thought was, do you actually lose terps or cannabinoid content if you harvest early? But it sounds like that's not true.
So it depends how early. Some people definitely cut too early, and that actually will take away from the THC percentages. So it'll be kind of a one-dimensional high. It'll give you that white-looking hash. So it's pretty much all a bag appeal when people are cutting early.
Okay.
So it's a fine line between too early and too late, and really working with a grower that knows those perfect timings is really essential. And then down to like handling the material, you can't even shake it around because you're trying to keep all those trichomes so intact. So it's such a more gentle process than the BHO side of things as well. So it takes a lot of more care and love and attention from the hash maker to the grower. But yeah, once again, it really brings through that natural essence of the plant, the closest thing to the flower that you can really get. So
yeah, I think we would all agree that a quality made hash rosin or a fill melon is the best way to consume cannabis. Probably the most medicinal, cleanest, just tastiest.
Exactly. Down to clean. I mean, I have asthma really bad, so using hydrocarbons and dabbing that, I mean, after a while, you really start to feel it, and that was another big problem for me. So yeah, I just try to find something that works with smoking because I love to smoke so much. So the cleanest smoke is pretty much a necessity with having asthma and stuff. So that's definitely a big thought in my brain too.
Now,
well, just to play devil's advocate a little bit, since I do have a hydrocarbon background. Hydrocarbon extractions, they actually do capture more of the terpene content of the flower than you would capture with a solventless extraction, just simply because when you're doing a hydrocarbon extraction, you're stripping the plant of all of the terpenes, which are actually solvents, and as well as the full spectrum of cannabinoids. So, not to knock hydrocarbons, honestly, I'd like to see, side by side terpene contents between, the same strain that has been washed solventlessly, and then the same strain that has been extracted with hydrocarbon.
And hydrocarbons, I mean, done correctly and done right are just as good in my opinion. It's just it really comes down to no one knows where they're getting their products, especially BHO, because no one around here is making it. It's all being imported. So it's either is it the stuff that failed the lab tests that someone really needs to backdoor and get money on, and 9 times out of 10, I believe it is. So it's really where you're getting it and are they doing it correctly. If it's done correctly, once again, you're getting rid of all those residual solvents in the purging process. So I hate to knock it too much because I was a BHO smoker for years. So I'm not trying to demonize it, but when you find that better step, it's like, why not take it, essentially, in my opinion.
Now, in other legal markets like Cali, is BHO still popular, or are we starting to see like a full kind of sway towards, entirely solventless extraction?
So you're definitely in the past 3 years, we've definitely seen a bigger swing towards solventless, in especially the connoisseur market. I mean, I like to make the comparison between Budweiser and to use a local example, Mortalis.
Yeah.
So I mean, Budweiser, it'll you can drink it, it'll get you buzzed. It tastes pretty decent, but it's mass produced. So what most laboratories will do with hydrocarbons, they'll use the trim, they'll use, the leftovers to get to get the most value out of the harvest. So that's where, JMO is basically saying, you don't really know where it's coming from out here in New York because nobody's actually doing it at the moment. But yes, if you make proper live resin with the same kind of material that we make solventless extracts with, you'll get an extremely good product. But that being said, the connoisseur market is definitely shifting over towards solventless.
For sure.
Yeah, we don't want outside things touching our cannabis products, right? Just like ethanol extraction, stuff like that. I know that's historically what people have always used, and it still works really well. Before I was in this industry, I was in the CBD industry and played around with ethanol extracts and CO2 extracts, and both are will extract what you want, but there is just there's no doubt that the solventless and the CO2 stuff is just much a cleaner method. And when we're creating medicine, it never made sense to me to essentially taint a product with poison. Ethanol is a poison. The blasting chemicals and stuff, those are poisons. So I definitely see a trend towards these solventless concentrates, especially in the connoisseur market.
For sure.
And the thing with some of these extracts, I don't know if hash rosin will ever really be able to. Well, maybe eventually, now that the industry has really started to become mainstream, it's very hard to scale this stuff because of the process. So I was hoping that we could talk a little bit about the kind of step by step from the inputs. What are the ideal inputs? Is it trim? I doubt it. High resinous or high trichome flower. Kind of walk me through what how you guys your process that you go through to make a really high quality hash rosin product.
Well, to be honest, it actually all starts with the genetics. So in solventless extraction, let me start with hydrocarbon extraction. So hydrocarbon extractions, you can pretty much get the same yield off of almost any strain that you decide to extract, because you're using, basically universal solvents that will, dissolve anything, that it exists in the plant. But with solventless extractions, it's very strain specific, because there's different size heads. Some of the strains, they just produce different amounts of resin. And so, for example, like a strain like an OG Kush, that won't yield nearly as well as, say, like a Gorilla Glue. So like a OG Kush probably yields around 1 to 2%, whereas a Gorilla Glue could yield upwards of 8%.
A fresh frozen white. Yeah, and it really comes down to the type of trichome that's on the plant. You're looking for a short bulbous head. There's a lot of strains that are very, very sticky, and they have long stalks and short, smaller heads. And those are actually notoriously sativas, or just other strains that when you literally, the sticky icky, those ones that you literally can't pull your fingers together after you stop touching them. But those ones that have that really hard outer layer, it's a very sandy resin. I mean, the bags that you look and you shake around and you just see the crystals all at the bottom of your bag. Those are the hash strains that really are able to be worked in ice and water physically, and then still be kept intact in the water without popping, essentially, because those ones that are very brittle, they'll bust in the water, and you'll see literally terpenes, oil slicked inside your water, and there's all your yield and all your heads popped. So it comes down to genetics, the grower, and other than that, and then hashmaker comes last. Really, it goes grower or genetics, grower, then hashmaker. It all comes from there, and fire in, fire out is really the motto of the industry, the solvent industry. So
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people now are really starting to see, hash rosin. It's, anywhere between 60, 80 bucks a gram, and people are trying to get in it, but they're not taking their crops, they're taking their trim and kind of the ass end of their products, and that's really a no-go. You gotta really devote your entire crop to the wash.
yeah, it takes months of planning before you can just wake up and say, unless you have just a strain that's known as a winner. But yeah, usually it takes months of planning and you wanting to dedicate a crop to it. And there's really no half-assing it when it comes down to it.
And that's exactly what I do with my grows. I don't dry any flower. All of the genetics that I run have been specifically bred for hash produce, to be a high yielder in hash. So I don't dry any flower at all. Everything that I grow, I buck the fan leaves and then I freeze and don't touch it until I give it to him.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I had always, economically speaking, said it does not make sense for anybody to take their entire crop and wash it and turn it into hash rosin. That's crazy. I've always thought that was crazy. We had a conversation yesterday where you broke it down step by step, broke down the math, and obviously it has to be good genetics and good inputs. Like you said, it wouldn't be worth it with an OG Kush. So can you kind of walk me through the math and the return of, a really high quality input and what that looks like for, downstream?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, when any hash maker is looking for a good yielding strain, they're looking around 5% of fresh frozen weight. So, I mean, the easiest way we can do this is if I was given 1,000 grams of fresh frozen to process and it came back 5%, I would get 50 grams of the bubble hash back in return. I mean, that right there is a very viable product when you're talking 1,000 grams of fresh frozen. So fresh frozen weight is actually around 3 to 4 times the weight of dry. So if you want to do 1,000 and then around the fresh frozen weight is about 285 grams. So yeah, you can do the math around that, about 10 ounces. So it's really that fresh frozen weight to bubble hash weight is what all the hash makers are looking for. If it's from 4 to 7%, it's definitely viable and a winner. Anything under that that people are working with, it better have an amazing terpene profile that people will pay hundreds of dollars a gram for, because that's when the margin gets very, very slim. But some people do it just because it's such a rare terpene that people will pay whatever for it. Like the Skittles is a notorious one for not washing well.
I was literally just about to mention Skittles because Skittles has a very low cannabinoid percentage, but it has a very high terpene percentage.
Right.
So when you do make hash out of it, you get a very low yield, but it is extremely fire.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that like that blueberry Skittles that JJ always has?
It's so those lime terpenes that come through with the Skittles. In any cross, really, it's if you have it, people know, and especially in hash, it's even more rare. So yeah, having that is having those ones that are a little bit more rare, but they're low yielders. If you have the market, then they could be viable. But right now, the market's so young here. It's like it can't not be 5 or to 7%er to be able to pretty much be viable. So
it's a huge gamble right now for most local growers to throw their harvest into solventless extraction, because if you have a whole room that you throw into that you want to turn into hash, but you don't know if it's going to yield or not. There's basically no recovering that material once you wash it into hash. So, say you grow enough for 5 pounds of dry flour If you wash that and you only get, a 2% return, you just basically ruined your entire harvest.
Ouch. Yeah, could you imagine?
Yeah, I've done it before.
Yeah, I've done it as well. That's kind of the caveat of getting into the hash game.
Yep.
It's a lot of fails. It's a lot of falling on your face and getting it back up. It took me a year really of like really dedicated washing to really find something that actually melted as bubble hash. So I mean that's another caveat is you can make a strain dump 10%, but it could be all just horrible heads, pretty much damaged heads, stock, or they're just not filled with oil. They're essentially just empty. And you'll try to dab that on a nail and it'll just char to black.
Really?
Yeah, so quality melt is filled with oils. And so, I mean, if you even want to take this is a bubble hash. And at first that'll be a beach sand. It'll be so dry that you could literally stir it around like a sandy texture.
I actually have a jar of the
And when it melts down, those oils start pushing out of it, and it almost literally looks like rosin because of how much oil and how wet it looks. But that's literally all just trichome heads from the plant. And
so if you can see there, like it's kind of trying to focus
so
that in.
This is it, fresh. That's fresh bubble hash, and that's all. Like I said, just trichome.
Is this the
heads.
pot of gold?
Yeah, that's the pot of gold.
That is the pot of gold. Shout out Rob at Rock City Genetics.
Yeah,
that's his cut.
Beautiful cut. That was around a 5%er as well. So in the hash world, you really can't beat that.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Stinky.
And so getting to rosin, this is the step before rosin. So all that beach sand, you pretty much take it into a bag between heat and pressure and squish the oils out of it. And that's the final step, the hash rosin that everyone's going crazy about. And the reason everyone's going so crazy about it is because it's so stable of a product. The bubble hash you have to keep in a fridge. You have to keep it cold or it greases together. It tries to melt together. And that's why bubble hash wasn't popular at all, because it was just such a annoying product to work with, and it degraded in quality by the day if you had it. So after rosin came on the scene, people can have a jar in their pocket, walk around, still be smoking all day, and it doesn't change in consistency really. So
how should you store it?
Bubble hash or rosin?
Rosin or hash rosin, yeah.
So hash rosin, that's the best part about it, is you could really just keep it at room temperature.
Okay.
Well, maybe. So it depends on how the cure is done. So if a fresh press product, fresh press rosin, you usually want to keep in either the freezer, preferably, or the fridge. I like to use a wine cooler. But if you have a cold cure product, like how I do my rosin, you can the terps get locked into the material, so they don't evaporate off as easy as they would with like a fresh press material.
What's the cure look like? Like, what's the cure process like?
Yeah, so once it comes straight off the plates, the rosin, if it's quality, it'll be clear as glass. Thank you so much. It'll be clear as glass. You could see right through it, and clarity means quality, essentially. Once you put that into a jar and keep it cold, it'll stay clear for, it depends on the strain, but for a relatively long time. But then from there is where you get all your curing techniques. A heat cure, a cold cure, jams, people call it, things like that. And that's where people have been playing with rosins as of lately to get different consistencies out of them. So pretty much the duration and heat or cold is essentially the ways you can take it.
What's the difference? So what type of product, or like a cold cure versus a warm cure?
Well, so it really depends on the strain, really, because different strains have different terpene contents. So, for example, like a strain that has an extremely high terpene content, you would want to cold cure, because if you hot cure it, terpenes are volatile solvents. So if you leave, it doesn't even matter, BHO, solventless, whatever. If you leave that out at room temperature, open in an open jar, you're going to lose terpenes almost immediately. So what a cold cure does is you basically, you leave a jar in a cold room, completely closed, undisturbed, like untouched. You don't, whip it or mix it at all. And what that does is it locks the terpenes into the hash. So it's almost like a molecular bond.
Yeah, because terpenes are super. I mean, even at room temperature, terpenes start to volatilize. So I would imagine if with a warm cure, you're automatically going to degrade that terpene content.
Well, not sort of degrade it. It would really, people say it really changes it, I'd say. It brings through different terpene profiles with the warmth. And really the goal of a heat cure is to create diamonds, solventless diamonds.
Okay.
Those are the new things on the scene, the jam text. So it becomes like almost like the BHOE diamond, that sugary, wet consistency. And the funny thing is when you look at the whole rosin market, it's really a mirror of the BHO market. The rosin guys have always been chasing the BHO guys on what they've been doing. So, I mean, when it came to shatter, then you had guys making the fresh press. When it came to batters, then you see the cold cure coming. You see the rosin market always kind of follow behind the BHO guys that kind of push the envelope, and then they kind of take it for their own and put their own spin on it, which I really enjoy.
Well, so it's funny that you say that, because in the California market, when I was doing hydrocarbons, it always did seem like that the solventless guys were, a year or two behind the, it's not the same technology or, the same technique, but to get the end product. But so 2015, 2016, shatter was the most prevalent. And so that's where, rosin would be, we'd have the fresh press that looked like shatter. And nobody really knew that, you could cold cure it to lock those terpenes in. So, everybody would, you'd have a gram of fresh press that looks like shatter, and you leave it out for, even overnight, and in the morning it becomes like a dry powder. Mm-hmm. So, so once batters became popular in probably around 2015, 2016, then, the cold cure started coming out in 2017, 2018.
Yeah.
And then back to what he was talking about. So around 2017, 2018 in the hydrocarbon scene, diamonds became really popular. So, hash makers started trying to emulate that by mechanically separating the cannabinoids from the terpenes in this, in their solventless hash.
See, it's funny because this is all kind of new. Right, I keep hearing you say 2017, 2018. Obviously, people have been growing, making edibles for decades. But this whole, this new concentrate market and this new, kind of solventless concentrate market is all relatively new. I guess, is there somebody who's a legend in this space who kind of started this whole thing? Give me a little bit of historical breakdown, because I tell you, I don't know a lot about it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a lot of OGs on the West Coast that I would consider legends. I mean, even going back to the YouTube videos that taught me everything. I mean, BC Bubbleman, guy out of Canada, he's the pioneer of the educational scene in the hash making industry. I mean, that's where I learned all I knew without experience myself. So, I mean, some BC Bubblemans, Nika T out of Colorado, Essential Extracts, they were the first licensed solventless company in the entire country. So, yeah, there's a few guys that have always pushed the envelopes, but it's always really been West Coast. I'm sure you have Maine up there that's actually making a name for themselves, too. Helio Hash from Maine just went to Ego Clash, which is, the biggest hash event competition in the country, and he swept the solventless game,
which is amazing.
Yeah, which is
amazing.
The West Coast hash guys left with their tails between their legs, apparently, because East Coast came to killed it.
Wait, who did you say he's from Maine?
He's from Maine. His name's Helio Hash.
Okay.
They got big farms up there. They really kill it. But yeah, went to the West Coast and won the cups. So
killed it.
Yeah, so it's funny. There's it is very still in its infancy in my opinion. But yeah, there's little pockets of legends around the country for sure.
Well, so if you really want to go all the way back, so hashish actually started in the Middle East. So hashish actually comes from the root word that it was the Arabic word for assassin, and the word was hashashin, and so basically they would eat a whole bunch of hash, but to get into this mental state where they could, go perform assassinations.
Hashash people.
Yeah, exactly. So if you go to Europe, the Middle East, Netherlands, so in my opinion,
Those are the birthplaces.
Yeah, in my
it,
opinion, if you want to get really down to it, rest in peace. But Frenchie Cannoli was probably the first guy who brought this kind of technology to the States with the Temple balls.
Yeah, for sure.
But those aren't really dabbable. Those are more, that's more of a smokable product. The dabbable solventless extracts are really kind of, new within the past couple of years.
And they get a lot of the credit too. That's where the hype kind of came behind it. Once rosin and then that full melt bubble came on the scene, it was like pretty much a game changer from there.
You know, it's so funny. It's funny. I've been in the space for a couple of years, and I just started from JJ learning about full melt, and I kept hearing him. He parades full melt. Shout out to JJ from High Minded Collective. He was on here last week. Supposed to be here, had something come up, but he was parading full melt, and I was like, I don't get it. I've never even smoked it, and that seems we're just starting to see all these new products rising to the surface, and this ain't going to be the last one. I feel like just like we keep seeing these new cannabinoids hit the market. CBD or not CBD, CBN, CBG, all these THCA. We're going to start to see these new kind of concentrates and new types of concentrates and offshoots of concentrates hit the market as it goes mainstream, and it's just awesome because it's not just flower anymore. Flower, it's everything else.
I mean, getting down to that, I think, maybe a while down the road, 10, 15 years, we're going to start dabbing if you want to start getting on that.
Maybe after.
All right.
I go at 500.
Cool. I just lost my train of thought. Oh, okay. So I think in about 10, 15 years, I don't want to say obsolete, but I think flower is going to be really the less of the majority. Because when you really want to get down to it, concentrates have a shelf life. If you have it in the fridge over years with rosins.
Years.
That's crazy.
Years. Yeah, years.
I have stashes in my freezer, from 3 years ago that are still good.
Still perfectly good.
And honestly, they're just aging like wine because it'll be a completely different terpene profile years later than when it was a fresh press. So it's funny. When you talk about cannabis, you're gonna have so much old stale cannabis on the shelves once these dispensaries hit after the first few months.
Yep.
And that's just kind of the caveat with flower. It goes old, it goes stale very quickly. So having a product with a longer shelf life, I feel like will be a huge game changer too when people start adopting it more.
No doubt.
All right, we're gonna do some bubble hash dabs.
Couple flags.
Yes.
And this is made by you guys?
Yeah, this one's made by me, grown by Upstate.
Sweet.
Oh, is there no water in that? Oh, going in dry. My bad.
I'll live.
Here, there's a water bottle right there.
Oh, that's so funny. My bad. Oh, shit.
Dry dabs in the studio.
Yeah.
Honestly, dry dabs of melt are fire.
So, and we got a couple products here, and I want to thank you guys for hooking up with some products today. But it goes beyond, hash doesn't just have to be dabbable, or hash rosin doesn't have to be dabbable. You can make some incredibly good products with them, whether that's edibles or cookies or gummies or whatever. But you've come up with something that's really cool and unique that I haven't really seen before, and that's your syrup.
Yep.
Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yep. So just plug in this really quick, just a little shameless plug that'll focus in. But so I love using rosin and solventless extracts for edibles simply because most edibles these days that you'll see at dispensaries or in the traditional market, they're all made with distillate. And so distillate is just basically distilled delta 9 THC. So when you eat a delta 9 distillate edible, that's all you're getting is the delta 9. You're not getting any of the other hundreds of cannabinoids that exist in cannabis
that we don't even know about yet.
Yeah. So you're not ingesting your CBDs, your CBGs, your CBNs. There's even different forms of THC. There's THCV. There's hundreds of them. And when you smoke cannabis, the high that you get is really determined by that entourage effect of all of those cannabinoids and even the terpenes working together. Because a lot of people don't understand or aren't knowledgeable to the fact that terpenes exist in almost every single, herb you can think of. Almost, you put an essential oil in your, home humidifier, little vaporizer, and those are terpenes. Even limonene, it's an industrial solvent. That is a terpene. But they all have, different physiological effects. So you really need that kind of full spectrum of what cannabis offers chemically to get the most optimal experience.
It's just like it seems like it's like almost like a one note high when you're using a lot of distillates. That full spectrum, it's like you'll get the body and then you'll get it in the head, and it seems like it'll last even a few hours longer because it just takes your body that much more time to process it when you want to get down to it. It's not just snap, there's THC right into your system, that's it, and then roll with it. And it'll give you a completely different effect as well. So that's why I truly believe in solventless edibles as well. And there's so many different ways that you could use bubble hash and even the byproducts from it to create edibles. So,
yeah, trying to, I've always been a fan of, there's no waste in cannabis, whether that's trim, whether that's, residual stuff. We've used, residual stuff from gummies to make juice. If you can get really good and really efficient by learning how to use all of your product.
What's interesting is actually I've learned very recently that you can even use the roots of cannabis in cooking.
Mm-hmm.
They create man, I gotta look it up now. But they use it in mainly Asian cooking, and it's almost like an organic natural MSG.
Really?
Yeah.
So you just probably like grind them up and put them in tea or something?
Yes. No, they use it in actual food.
Oh,
use
really?
it in actual food, and it enhances the flavor of pretty much anything.
And probably has some medicinal.
Sounds good.
Probably has medicinal benefits. I'm assuming. Is that still a pot of gold?
yeah.
Nice.
Yup. I have a few more flavors coming in a few weeks that I'm pretty excited about. I got a Galactic Runts from him that's coming up, which I've never worked with the Runts before, but everyone crazes over it, so I'm hoping it does well.
The terps are crazy. I just chopped it this morning.
That should be great. Then also a Chem Dog from Shoutout Rock Flower. I haven't done too much work from him, so we'll see how it goes.
Cool.
But the Chem Dog looked crazy. He had some beautiful flowers. And then shout out Just Weed 840. Their blueberry fritter I brought to the carnival, and everyone loved it. It was a crowd favorite. I sold out of that. So yeah, it really comes down to the growers. When I'm on my off season, I usually grow outdoor greenhouse for all my resin. I just set up my indoor grow, but yeah, shout out to all the growers that have been keeping me busy. Yeah, once again, shout out.
What do you like? What type of how much would a grower have to bring to you to make it worth it?
Yeah, so I've been doing smaller runs. It's different who you ask. The guys in Cali want like 10, 20,000 grams, like big, large scale. But usually per run, I do like 2,500 to 3,000 grams. And then from there, I'll do, if there's more, I'll do different cycles. But
awesome.
Yeah, so, and to fresh frozen weight, I believe that is a dry pound, is around 2,000 to 2,200 grams.
You can only fit so much in a 20-gallon brute.
Yeah, for sure. And you only can paddle so much. I can only paddle so much for so long. So
it's like rowing through rapids for 30, 45 minutes straight.
And you got longer. The nice thing that we didn't mention about this, we should get into techniques and actually how to do it. And
yes,
and a home guy wanted to do it for themselves to try it out. That would be a great next episode. But I mean, you got to be in the coldest room possible. I'm outside thank God it's freezing outside, because I just washed with my coat outside right in the snow, because it's below freezing, and that's the most optimal time for the temperature for the trichomes to fall off. So
I mean, I even carry my stuff in a Pelican with a couple ice box, ice things in there.
Keep it on ice.
Keep it cold.
Keep it cold.
So what are some of the techniques that you'd be willing to share? Like, what would be one awesome mentoring technique that you could share to a new hash maker, some advice to a new hash maker who maybe wants to get into the industry and start a little hash business and, a little side hustle? What type of advice could you offer them?
Well,
it's easy.
Yeah, probably the test wash tech, honestly.
Well, even down to just like a guy at home, just like grab a bucket, get some quality bags, And if you got a pizza box and a room that's a little bit climate controlled, you don't need some crazy equipment. You could wash a few ounces and see what you get. And if you dry it properly, that's the huge caveat to why I'm doing a little bit more upscale is I have the equipment to dry it. But air drying it and seeing what comes out, anyone really could do it with a little bit of time and research. Yeah.
You need a freeze dryer, right?
So that's in my case, yes. If you want to be doing it at scale all the time, you're talking a 2-day turnaround instead of a 2-week turnaround for drying. So it's a game changer for sure.
And is the quality of the product the same or better with?
It's way better.
It's way better. Some people preferred air dried hash because it's a little bit more. It's more like the consistency and the look of it. But when it comes down to it, the freeze dryer locks in terpenes.
Yeah.
A quicker dryer is a lighter color. So it's unbeatable.
And time is money. I mean, that's a lot of time.
Exactly.
Well, I want to add to that because I want to shout out Medison out in California, and he is a old school grower and hash maker. He's been making hash, I think since before 2010, and all he does is air dry his hash, and he's just got the tech down somehow where it comes out super good and extremely stable as bubble hash, which is it's really hard to do that. So shouts out to him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess it takes a little bit more skill for sure to air dry because so many more things could go wrong with it. But yeah, I'll always swear by the freeze dryer. It really was a game changer, and that's another reason why the hash came out of nowhere is because it became viable to be able to produce it at scale with that type of equipment as well. So
I was actually looking at Harvest Right freeze dryers a couple of years ago, not for hash making. We were just like doing some R&D and we were looking into them, and they were like on a 2-year, like a really long wait time, and that was actually pre-COVID, so it was longer than 2 years ago. I would imagine that as this industry starts kicking up, it's going to get harder and harder to get freeze dryers, right?
It's even harder right now. So actually, with COVID, surprisingly, well, not really surprisingly, the demand went up for freeze dryers for people that wanted to make, prepared food at freeze dried food at home because it lasts almost indefinitely.
Yeah.
And I think their smallest unit is it's about like $3,000, maybe $2,500, something like that.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah, I think it's
they're not cheap.
$3,000. Yeah, but it's once again when you get that passion and you know what you're going to use it for, I was totally up for it. And once again, it was a game changer for me.
Yeah, it's a good investment too. I mean, we all know what this business, what this industry can bring, and it's if you can invest. I always tell people, especially with cultivation, invest in good equipment the first time because I'm helping a buddy of mine mentoring him right now, and it's like, well, can I get the $200 dehumidifier from Home Depot or a small Andin? It's like, well, you're gonna enjoy this a lot better when your environment's dialed in. It doesn't shit the bed on you, and the end product is banging. That's if you can dial in your environment. Most people can grow good weed right off the bat. You need some techniques and a mentor, but if your environment's dialed and your tech's dialed, you just splurge a little bit.
Yeah, you're off to the races.
Yep.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
He's always like, am I gonna like it? What if I don't like it? You will like it. There's a reason why everyone does it, and you'll like it even more when your product's banging. You don't have to go through the headache of a constantly fluctuating environment. And I'm sure the tech in environment controls is the same for hash making.
For sure.
Yep.
For sure. I mean, even the commercial guys are in walk-in coolers every day.
Yeah.
So you can get that high scale with it. So yeah, it's definitely a growing market, and a lot of people are getting into it right now. So. But
yeah, so as far as the growing goes, I mean, to echo what you said, it is all environment. As far as the equipment, and the the area of where your grow is, the most important thing is genetics first of all,
Yes.
But if to have the best quality product, you need to have the best environment possible.
I don't even remember what question around that pot of gold's got us.
Oh, yeah,
got me rambling over here.
Yeah,
I told you it was gonna happen too.
big flags of hash over here.
Yeah, we were just talking about, environment. In cannabis, environment is everything,
sure.
And dialing, investing in the good equipment like the Harvest Right or like a good freeze dryer. Not only are you going to save 2 weeks of time, but you're also, the quality is going to be great.
Quality, yep.
Well, it also comes out, more sanitary as well.
Yeah.
Because when you try air drying hash, if your environment that you're air drying your hash in is not, completely perfect, you can introduce all sorts of molds, just contaminants, whatever.
Yeah.
But in a freeze dryer, you do not get that.
Well, I guess as we, kind of get up towards the end of time, I'm dying to know, what's the future look like? Obviously, we're all waiting for what are the regs going to look like? What are licenses going to look like? What's the industry going to look like? How do we get in? Can we get in? Is there room for guys like us?
Too many good questions.
What's the future looking like for you guys?
If you want to kick it off.
Well, I mean, hopefully, New York's an open book right now, and I'm coming from, experience in the California Prop 215 days, which felt like, honestly, the Wild West. But, coming back here to New York where there's zero regulations at the moment, it's a very odd experience, and it's very interesting to see what is going to happen.
It's a dream right now.
What kind of laws they're going to pass.
Yeah.
And kind of what guidelines, because they are probably going to follow some sort of guidelines that other states have legalized. They'll try to follow that kind of thing. But it's interesting to see where they go.
Well, it's the nice thing is being kind of late to the party with New York being 16th, 17th. I don't even know where we are in the list of states that have legalized. Somewhere between the 15th and 18th state to legalize for adult use. We have all these other states before us to look at as case studies. What's worked, what hasn't.
Yes,
figure out the inequities, figure out what's, all the good stuff, put all the good things in one bill, leave out the bad stuff. Make sure you hit your social justice and your social equity, priorities, and, figure out how to incorporate the legacy market better than anyone else has. And boom, you should be able to roll it out. It's just,
in a perfect world, yeah.
In a perfect world. Mm-hmm. But I think the problem I know the problem is that there's so much money and different components and pillars of this industry that, with that, it comes over regulation and an egregious amount of red tape and, crazy, barriers to entry and taxes. And it makes people question, do you want to go, do you want to get a license? Because ideally we would love everybody to get a license and be able to do what we're doing. Everybody makes a living and everyone can market and be out, in the open and not be living under a rock. Yep. But at the same time is are they going to make it feasible to do business?
So
I don't know.
My hope is they follow either like Colorado or maybe even Oklahoma, and having those micro licenses for the mom and pops to actually somewhat make it.
Yep.
The only really thing that I'm worried about is New York City downstate. I feel like obviously complicates things a little bit with being able to hand out licenses to anyone really that can come to it. But I'm hoping maybe some way it's handled different in the city than upstate New York. But in my future, I would love to shoot for a micro license to have small scale cultivation and then get into processing as well. So something along those lines.
I do think that they're actually, I heard the other day that they are now in the process of really drafting what the micro business is going to look like.
Oh, that's
Apparently,
huge.
There's
huge.
A lot of points of contention, and it is kind of complicated because will be legally the only way that you can, be vertically integrated and operate seed to sale in New York. So it's going to be obviously limited by square footage or, plant count or whatever. But I do think that they are going to make it, I'll say, relatively easy and probably inexpensive for people to get in because, just like the craft beer and wine industry.
I was waiting for you to say it.
We're all waiting, but
it's the same exact thing, but it's going to be bigger. Cannabis is bigger.
Well, yeah, New York is potentially the largest cannabis market in the United States. Even over California. Yep. But to add on to what JMO said earlier, I really hope New York does not become like Oklahoma. Where Oklahoma just hands out licenses. And the problem with that is you get these massive companies with millions of dollars that come in and try to build these massive facilities and then just tank the commercial price of cannabis.
Yeah, for sure.
And so that just hurts the overall industry.
It's like finding the middle ground between the two.
Yeah, exactly.
Is hard, but
yeah, it's interesting because just like you can I think a lot of people are afraid of the large cannabis companies because the bigger you are, your economies of scale are bigger, and you can have better prices, especially compared to craft cannabis, But just like you can walk into Wegmans and you can buy a 30-pack of Bud Light or Keystone for $14, you can also buy a 6-pack of Mortalis for $25 or something like that. And, while Mortalis will never, ever, ever be in the same, ring as, an Anheuser-Busch, they're still doing pretty good. I know there's a line out that door every single Friday when they do their drops. And it's like, in a small scale, we all know what you can do in the cannabis space on a small scale if your product is high quality.
And that's honestly exactly what I personally am going for, is a business model similar to, a craft brewery like Mortalis.
Yeah. I think the industry is going to be built on the craft license here. And as long as they make them accessible and relatively inexpensive, I think that, this can even be a $10 billion industry if they do it right. I just hope that the retail taxes are going to be tough.
Yes.
And it's going to,
Sure.
I've been wanting and advocating for the micro business license for years. It's something I've been really passionate about. But as I look at, financially with the taxes and the inability to write off, stuff, cost of goods sold and everything, it becomes, you're looking at like 30 to 40% taxes, probably even higher, plus labor and all this. Retail looks really tough.
Yeah,
So I hope that they're able to make it, they incentivize people to go towards the micro license, because I think that's what's going to build the industry. But if it becomes too expensive, you're either going to have the legacy market will live on, which it always will in some capacity, or people are just going to start producing and manufacturing, and you're not even going to really have brands. You're just going to have factories. So, the short of it is, I think the micro license is the golden ticket. What that looks like, is still TBD.
For sure.
Hopefully, it looks like something like opening, a microbrewery out here.
Yeah.
I mean, there's smaller, there's a lot of small, craft breweries in Rochester. Like, we have, one of the best scenes, honestly, in the country for small craft breweries.
And there's like 10 of them within a couple square miles. And guess what? They all thrive because they all got their own flavor. They all got their own thing. They all collab together.
And they're all regulated. It is alcohol.
Yeah.
So why shouldn't cannabis be treated differently? Why would cannabis be treated differently?
And I mean, hopefully they're taking note from California, dropping taxes for the rest of the year, because the black market was winning and they were losing all their tax revenue to the black market. And it's like people want to play the legal game, but it's like, how hard is it going to be? So
it's like, just throw a sales tax on there like everything else. Don't kill it with an
maybe
excise
a little
tax.
higher. I mean,
sure,
at
10%.
first, exactly, as an emerging market. I mean, we're going to have to bite the bullet somewhere, but crippling taxes 30-40%, it makes it unviable. And that's where you get into corruption, like people backdooring product. Like,
it's going to happen.
Exactly.
It's going to happen.
It's like, how much risk do they want to take? Really, in that sense.
Low barriers to entry, lots of small business, make it tough for the big guys to take over. And you got a recipe for a good industry, and don't tax the hell out of people. And it can be revitalizing to communities and to areas. Like, I really think that, obviously,
especially the Finger Lakes area.
Totally.
Because I mean, there's a pretty decent, there's a saying that, where good wine grows, where you can grow good grapes, you can grow fantastic cannabis.
Yeah.
I mean, you see the same thing in, California, for example. Napa Valley, it's right near Humboldt. I'm pretty sure no, it's not. Sorry, I'm really stoned, but it's it's Northern California. Really, they grow really good grapes. They grow really good cannabis, and we do the same thing in the Finger Lakes.
Yeah, I think New York City is always going to kind of be the shining star of commerce in New York State, just by how big it is. But I would venture to say that, it's going to be in the concrete jungle. You need a lot of space, and I'm sure there's big time growers in New York City. But I do think that like craft cannabis and like the really connoisseur market is going to live in the western part of New York State. It'll be everywhere, especially like the consumption lounges, and retail will be huge. If you're a little business or manufacturer and you can land some New York City accounts, you're going to crush it.
Yeah, so, I thought about that for years. Like, when it comes on which it is now, but who's going to supply New York City with all of that cannabis?
Yeah.
And that's just a whole different beast that I want nothing to do with when it comes down. That's the Budweisers. I feel like those. I feel like
that might be another thing that might go our favor is everyone's going to be looking down at New York City as the dollar sign, and we're kind of the hidden giant upstate. So,
but the agritourism.
Well,
side
you go to. I mean, New York City has some of the best craft. Some of the best craft small batch like food.
Yeah, clothing stores, things like that. Yeah,
there's a lot of connoisseurs down there.
For sure.
Well, we'll see. I think New York is poised to do really great. If when the time comes, we're supposed to see regulations in Q1. By March, April, I think we'll start to see what the industry is going to look like. I would probably say that within the year we'll start to see licenses and stuff. It's a slow roll up out for now. Everybody keep doing their thing. Keeping the hustle hard and refining your process and getting ready for the real McCoy and the legal market. So when the time comes, everybody can hop in and get their little slice of pie and, kind of live the dream. That's what I'm super excited about.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, guys, this has been fun. I learned a lot today.
Yeah, it's great.
You guys crushed it. I'm very thankful that you guys joined me today. I hope you'll come on again.
For sure. Yeah. We got to do an episode. I feel like a little bit more in depth on the hash and maybe even the technique. Which I'm an open book too. I'm not that type of person to hold it. I learned it from others, so I'm always willing to help.
For sure. That's how we're going to grow the industry. We just got to share. I hear so many people hoarding their information or, hey, $500 an hour for this. And, time and place, you got to make your money. But in an industry that's in such its infancy, we just got to be sharing and mentoring. And props to you guys for doing that.
Yep,
yeah, for sure. Well, guys, this has been another episode of Cannabis Cum Laude. Steve here with Joe from Upstate Organics. Check these guys out. And JMO from JMO's Primo. These are the hash guys in Rochester. Check out their pages. They're open books. If you have questions about hash makers, old hash makers, new hash makers, hit these guys up. They're the best of the best. Thanks again. We'll see you next week. Thanks to our friends here at Rockbox Recording and Production in Rochester, New York. They are a full professional podcast and video studio designed by a radio guy for podcasters. Audio, video, voiceovers, editing, whatever. Mouth off at Rockbox at rockbox.com.
You can follow Cannabis Cum Laude on LinkedIn and all other social media platforms, as well as Cannabis. And if you'd like to help support the show, search up Cannabis Cum Laude on Patreon. And of course, all of those links are in the show notes. Thanks for watching and listening.